So let's cut through the partisan static and examine this question. Are some of the media fanning the flames and being rather selective in the outrages they highlight? Joining us now here in Washington, Anna Marie Cox, Washington correspondent for GQ magazine. Craig Crawford, columnist for CQPolitics.com, and David Frum, the founder and editor of FrumForum.com. Craig Crawford, is Obama right that the media are fanning the flames here by feeding the most extreme sides of any issue?
Well, that's what they do these days. The two network channels you talked about are building audiences based on fanning the flames of partisans. So he's right, but I don't think it's necessarily wrong. I think the information out there that both channels put out and, to their supporters and partisans are things those people want to hear. And so he's, in a sense, blaming the audiences, not just the channels, because those audiences want that.
So you don't tie it to anything that goes on out in the real world. It's just chatter in your view?
I think there's a little bit of provocation of some of the more extreme behavior. I don't really hold them responsible for death threats and vandalism anymore than I do the political leaders.
Don't the media reward politicians and others who say inflammatory things as opposed to mild-mannered moderates?
Well, it depends on what you mean by reward. I mean, is covering that a reward? Is certainly giving someone airtime a reward? What I think is really interesting...
I would say it is a reward. There are 535 members of Congress. When you shout, "You lie," or "baby killer," or Alan Grayson said Republicans want old people to die, you get booked on shows.
You do.
You get your profile raised.
I don't know if that necessarily translates into power, especially power when it comes to this White House. As you know, I've been doing some research for this long-term project at GQ on the DC power list. And what's the interesting thing is about talking to the White House about who the powerful journalists are, they don't mention anyone at Fox, they don't mention anyone at MSNBC, they mention a few people at CNN. But it really is focused mainly on sort of the big traditional print outlets as well as some internet outlets. They don't think of the stuff that goes on Fox as something that's really like harming them. I mean, it may harm them in sort of it excites a certain amount of base that's never going to vote for them anyway, but it's not something that they're like,
Is there an alternative, David Frum? Can the media ignore death threats and vandalism and the kind of hot talk that drives ratings?
Look, the media are trapped by changes in the technology and business of their industry. Trapped. A generation ago, or two, when there were 3 channels plus PBS, and when you needed 15 million people to make a living. The media could focus on the broad country, and most people had no choice about getting political information. It was there at 6:30 whether you wanted it or not. Today, it is possible to opt out, and enormous numbers of Americans are opting out and being left completely uninformed. The question is, why would people make the effort to watch a channel that will give them information? And the answer is because they're driven by very intense intense antagonisms, intense passions. And so the industry incentive structure says the way we will get people to watch and give them information is by making them angry. Otherwise, they'll watch American Idol or play Xbox.
We don't want that. President Obama returned to the subject later in the week, an interview with CBS's Harry Smith. Let's roll some of that.
Are you aware of the level of enmity that crosses the airwaves and that people have made part of their daily conversation about you?
Well, I mean, I think that when you listen to Rush Limbaugh or Glenn Beck,
it's beyond that.
It's pretty apparent, and it's troublesome. But keep in mind that there have been periods in American history where this kind of vitriol comes out.
Craig, does it elevate the stature of Beck and Limbaugh when the president keeps going after them by name?
Totally. I don't understand why he did that. And whenever you talk about those guys, then they talk about it themselves. I mean, and then they get all excited about it and they play it all over again, and it does aggrandize them.
I think I know why they do that.
It's no mystery. It's no mystery. President Obama would rather run against Rush Limbaugh than he would run against Mitt Romney. I mean, there are millions and millions of people who like Mitt Romney. Rush Limbaugh is one of the most unpopular people in the country. The president is choosing his political opposition.
He's unpopular, but he has a huge and passionate following on the radio.
People like anger as entertainment. They tend not to like anger as a motivation in actual real elections.
Well, the part of our brain that produces fear is actually more evolved than the reasoning part of our brain. So that's one reason it works.
When you say huge, everything is relative. Rush Limbaugh has a daily audience of 3, 4, maybe 5 million people. That's very, very big, and it's made him a rich man. It would, however, make you qualify you to be the Green Party candidate for president. The actual candidates for president.
He's not a politician.
He's not a politician.
And he had a response. He had a response this week which I want to read. He said, "Never in my life have I seen a regime like this governing against the will of the people purposely. I've never seen the media so supportive of a regime amassing so much power." I want to turn back to this, what I call selective outrage. So, for example, Karl Rove was at a book signing about a week or so ago in Beverly Hills, and you all probably saw what happened. Let's roll a little bit of that.
No, I didn't say go ahead. I would say you get away.
That signing was disrupted by Code Pink, and Fox played that up every other hour because it fit the Fox narrative, and obviously it's an infringement of free speech.
Right. Of whose free speech?
Well, shouldn't an author be able to go and have a book signing without being shouted down?
And shouldn't a protester be able to, I mean, well, I don't know. I mean,
you don't care?
I go on either side. I prefer that everyone be sort of civil with each other,
right.
But I don't think it's not infringing on Karl Rove's right to speak to have someone else interrupt him.
But here's the contradiction.
But I want to get back to this. Like Code Pink was to Fox News, what the Tea Partiers are to MSNBC now. I mean, Code Pink was the group that the Republicans and the GOP and Fox News wanted to have represent the Democratic Party.
But the contradiction there, as you pointed out, is that singling out certain people to portray the whole group. Rove said this is an example of totalitarianism on the entire left, and then they complain about Tea Party.
And what MSNBC played up this week, David Frum, were the arrests of some Christian militia members in Michigan, and that became a sort of a stand-in for there's a lot of intolerant people on the right.
Here's my question: if right and left are competing to be the biggest victim, who's competing to be the government? The country needs a government. It needs people who are willing to take responsibility and to say this is what, and what excites both sides are narratives of oppression, of silencing, and those things happen, and that was awful what happened to Karl Rove. And I don't care whether you call it a violation of free speech or just being a jerk. I don't think people have a right to be, or they may have a legal right to be a jerk. They have no moral right to be a jerk. They shouldn't do it. It's the wrong thing for television to be focusing on.
Prey to this false equivalency stuff. I mean, comparing the Code Pink speech interrupter at the Rove's book signing to a bunch of militia who plan to kill police officers and blow up their funerals, the media is prone to those false equivalencies.
Let me turn to one other issue that got a lot of ink and airtime this week. There was a scoop by Tucker Carlson's new website, The Daily Caller, about Michael Steele and some expenses of the Republican National Committee. Here's what some of your esteemed media colleagues did with that one.
Nightclub featuring topless women dancers imitating lesbian bondage sex, you say?
Will the Republicans finally smack down Steele? And will he like it?
I'm trying to think of all the lists that I would be on with my wife if I blew $1,900 at a West Hollywood topless club.
And voyeur West Hollywood it's kind of it's a naked lady place.
Find that pervert and get his card.
So these were expenses at a lesbian bondage themed club in LA. Michael Steele wasn't there, but he sort of took the rap for it in the media.
He did, although I've been saying, and this is another false equivalency to call him the Joe Biden of the GOP, the only thing they have in common is that he's able to say and do kind of nutty stuff, and people seem to sort of let it slide. Now, of course, it's very different to kind of, and actually, I'm sure you realize, more people in the GOP were upset about the spending on limousines and private airplanes than they were about the club.
David?
Well, I'm going to put in a commercial here because the reporter on our site, Tim Mack, actually went and looked at the Democratic Party records and found that they had spent as much, or if not more, at not strip joints because the women were in the same state of undress all the way through the evening, but pole dancing places, and that the Democratic Party had spent $250,000 hiring White House helicopters
briefly,
for Democratic
why did that
senators.
not get as much media attention?
That's an excellent question. Let's fix that right now.
There was a narrative out there that needed examples.
Tim Mack deserved more
One of the
attention.
reasons why it's not getting more outrage is the Democratic Party has a better ROI on those expenditures than the Republican Party did.
And there was a narrative out there about Steele, and they needed more support for it.
Before we go, Greg Crawford, you recently quit as an MSNBC contributor. You said the following: I simply could not any longer endure being a cartoon player for their lefty games. What did you mean?
I was getting pigeonholed into a lot of what we're talking about. I didn't get the memo back when MSNBC changed its stripes, and I wish them well and hope they make money, which is what I think they're trying to do. But it just wasn't for me.
You were getting pigeonholed as a left winger?
I felt so. In 8 of the last 10 segments I did were bashing Sarah Palin segments, and actually I'm not that interested in Sarah Palin.